All right, so we're going to dive into something that really shook up the world of football a few years back.
Yeah.
The European Super League.
It was a wild ride.
So you wanted to know how this whole crazy idea came about, what went wrong, and what it means for the future of the sport.
Big questions.
Get ready for some serious football intrigue,
Yeah.
because this deep dive is going to unpack all the juicy details
It was a plan that would have completely reshaped the landscape of European football.
as we know it.
As we know it, yeah.
So to set the stage,
Okay.
imagine a world where the biggest clubs,
Mm-hmm.
Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, the whole gang,
Yep.
always play each other
Right.
in a separate Super League,
Separate.
no matter how they do in their own domestic league.
Exactly.
It's like they wanted to create their own exclusive club,
Yeah.
and not everyone was invited.
That's a great way to put it.
Oh, thanks.
They were essentially trying to create a footballing equivalent of the EuroLeague in basketball.
Oh.
This wasn't just some small-scale project either. We're talking about a massive undertaking with billions of dollars in backing from JP Morgan Chase.
$5 billion to be exact.
Huge.
And that wasn't all.
No.
They were also throwing around promises of 10 billion euros in solidarity payments
Yeah.
and a 3.5 billion euro infrastructure fund.
Big money.
Those are some eye-popping numbers, even for the football world.
The financial aspect of this whole saga is really fascinating.
For sure.
While they claimed these huge sums would benefit the entire football pyramid, many questioned whether the money would actually trickle down to the smaller clubs.
Yeah.
Some saw it as a blatant power grab by the elite.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really rubbed people the wrong way.
Of course.
It felt like the rich were trying to get richer while shutting everyone else out.
Yep.
But to understand the whole picture, we need to go back in time a bit.
Okay.
The idea of a European Super League didn't just pop up out of nowhere, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There were actually several earlier attempts to create a similar breakaway league, going all the way back to the 1960s.
Wow.
One notable example was a plan in 1987 that involved giants like AC Milan, Real Madrid, and even Glasgow Rangers.
Interesting.
Then in the late 90s, we had another attempt led by Media Partners, a major Italian media company.
So the 2021 Super League wasn't a new concept.
No, it wasn't.
But it was definitely the most serious and well-funded attempt to make it a reality.
By far.
So what was different this time around?
Well,
Why did things go so far in 2021 when previous attempts had fizzled out?
I think there were a few key factors at play.
Okay.
First, the financial pressures on top clubs had been mounting for years, especially with the increasing costs of player salaries and transfer fees.
Yeah, makes sense.
The COVID-19 pandemic also played a role hitting club revenues hard
Ah, yeah.
and making the allure of a guaranteed income stream from a Super League even more tempting.
So it sounds like the clubs were looking for a more stable and lucrative financial setup.
Yeah, for sure.
But wasn't there also a sense that they felt UEFA, the governing body of European football, wasn't doing enough to promote their interests?
That's definitely part of the story.
Okay.
These clubs felt that UEFA's control over competitions like the Champions League was stifling their earning potential.
Interesting.
They believed they could generate more revenue and control their destiny by creating their own competition.
I see.
Essentially, it was a power struggle over who gets to call the shots in European football.
Okay, so we've got the financial motives and the power struggle.
Right.
But let's get to the dramatic part.
Right.
Tell me about the actual announcement of the Super League. How did that all go down?
Well, it was quite a bombshell.
I bet.
In April 2021, just as UEFA was preparing to announce their own reforms to the Champions League.
Oh, wow.
The 12 founding clubs of the Super League went public with their plans. They announced it on a Sunday night, catching everyone off guard.
It was like they were trying to sneak it past everyone, hoping nobody would notice.
It certainly felt that way. The timing was no coincidence. They were clearly trying to preempt UEFA's moves and seize control of the narrative.
Bold move.
It was a bold move, and it sent shockwaves through the football world. And the way they structured the league was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
They envisioned 20 teams split into two groups,
Okay.
playing home and away matches.
So like the Champions League?
Kind of, yeah. But these would be midweek matches,
Oh, right.
all leading up to a grand final.
Okay, so basically more football,
More football,
more money, and more power
for sure.
for the elite clubs.
Exactly.
But let's face it, this whole thing smelled a bit fishy from the start.
Yeah, there were definitely some red flags.
And it wasn't just the fans who were suspicious.
Right.
What about those uncapped solidarity payments they kept talking about? It sounded too good to be true.
There was a lot of skepticism about that.
Okay.
On the surface, uncapped solidarity payments meant there was theoretically no limit to how much money smaller clubs could receive from the Super League. But the details were vague,
Yeah.
and many suspected it was just a PR tactic to make the whole thing seem more palatable.
Right, because if they really cared about solidarity,
Yeah.
why not just set a clear and substantial minimum payment for the smaller clubs?
Exactly.
It all felt a bit like a smokescreen to hide the fact that the real winners would be the founding clubs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people saw through that.
And then there were those preferential financial terms.
Oh yeah, don't forget about that.
For Barcelona and Real Madrid.
They were reportedly in line for a bigger slice of the revenue pie.
Ah, the Spanish giants getting special treatment.
It raised a lot of eyebrows.
What a surprise.
And fueled accusations of favoritism.
But joking aside, this preferential treatment really exposed the hypocrisy
Right.
at the heart of the Super League.
At the heart of it.
They were talking about solidarity and a level playing field. But it was clear that some animals were more equal than others.
It definitely felt that way.
The whole thing reeked of elitism.
And that's ultimately what led to its downfall.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the backlash.
Okay.
Because things went south pretty quickly, didn't they?
It was an absolute firestorm.
Oh, I bet.
From the moment the Super League was announced, the opposition was fierce and unrelenting.
It wasn't just the usual suspects either.
No,
We're
we're
talking about a united front that included everyone.
everyone.
From UEFA
Yeah.
and FIFA
Yep.
to players, managers, fans,
Right.
and even national governments.
It was crazy.
It was like the entire football world had joined forces to say hell no
Exactly.
to this elitist scheme.
It was truly remarkable to see how quickly and decisively the football community mobilized against the Super League.
So what were some of the main concerns that people had? I mean, apart from the obvious greed and power grab,
Yeah.
what were the specific arguments against the Super League?
Well, there were a lot of worries about the impact on domestic leagues.
Oh, okay.
People feared that the Super League would become the main attraction,
All right.
relegating national competitions like the Premier League and La Liga to second-tier status.
Yeah, that would have been a disaster.
It would have been.
Imagine the Premier League without the drama of relegation battles.
Yeah.
Or the excitement of underdog stories. It
Exactly.
would have been a snooze fest.
And then there was the issue of sporting merit.
Yeah.
The Super League model, with its guaranteed spots for the founding clubs, would have undermined the principle of promotion and relegation,
Right.
which is fundamental to the spirit of football.
It's like they were saying, we're the elite,
Yep,
and we deserve to be here no matter what.
exactly.
It completely ignored the idea that any team, regardless of size or wealth, should have the opportunity to rise to the top through hard work and talent.
Yeah, they were basically saying forget about all that.
The Super League went against everything that makes football so compelling.
For sure.
The unpredictability,
Yep.
the drama,
The passion.
the possibility of a giant killing.
It would have created a closed system where the rich got richer and the rest were left to fight for scraps.
And let's not forget the lack of transparency in the whole process.
Oh, yeah, that was a big one.
The way they announced it, the secretive negotiations, the preferential treatment for certain clubs, it all stank of backroom deals and a complete disregard for the fans.
And that's where the real power of the backlash came from.
The fans.
The fans, they were the ones who made the most noise, organized protests, and ultimately forced the clubs to back down.
Yeah, the fans deserve a lot of credit for stopping this thing in its tracks.
Absolutely.
They showed that football is more than just a business.
Right.
It's a sport with a deep connection to its communities and a rich history of fan involvement.
The Super League saga highlighted the power of collective action and the importance of fan activism in holding the footballing elite accountable.
So let's talk about the collapse. Because after all that drama, things unraveled pretty quickly, didn't they? It was like a house of cards collapsing. 1 minute, they were this unstoppable force, and the next, they were scrambling to save face.
Yeah, that happened so fast.
So much for a Super League.
The pressure was just too much to bear. You had fans protesting outside stadiums, players and managers speaking out against the plan, and governments threatening to intervene. It was a PR nightmare for the clubs involved.
And then the dominoes started to fall.
Yep.
Chelsea was the first to break ranks,
Right?
followed quickly by Manchester City.
It was like a chain reaction. Once those two big English clubs pulled out, the whole thing began to unravel.
It's amazing how quickly it all fell apart. It just goes to show that even the richest and most powerful clubs can't ignore the collective will of the fans and the wider football community.
Yeah, they really underestimated the power of the people.
It was a humbling moment for the clubs involved, and it forced them to reassess their approach. We saw a lot of apologies from club owners, but the damage was done. The trust between the clubs and their fans had been broken.
It's going to take a long time to rebuild that trust.
For sure. But the Super League fiasco also sparked some important conversations about the future of football.
Absolutely.
It forced everyone to take a hard look at the financial imbalances in the game and the influence of big money.
One of the biggest takeaways was the renewed focus on fan ownership models in England in particular. There were calls for greater fan involvement in the running of clubs.
So they were asking, why should these billionaire owners have all the power? Shouldn't the fans, who are the lifeblood of the sport, have a greater say?
Exactly, it's their game.
It seems like the Super League, despite its failure, actually gave a boost to the fan ownership movement.
Oh, definitely. It brought the issue to the forefront. We also saw a lot of discussion about the need for greater financial transparency in football. People wanted to know where the money was going and how it was being spent.
It's like the Super League ripped the lid off of Pandora's box of financial shenanigans.
It definitely did. And UEFA, the governing body of European football, couldn't just sit back and ignore all this. They knew they had to respond to the concerns that had been raised.
So what did the UEFA do? Did they actually make any changes?
Well, they made some adjustments to the Champions League format, trying to appease both the elite clubs and the smaller ones.
Did it work?
I mean, it's still early days, but I don't think it really addressed the root causes of the problem.
So the Super League might be dead, but the battle for the soul of football continues.
Absolutely. The big questions about financial fair play, the distribution of wealth and influence of fans are still being debated. The Super League saga was just a chapter in a much longer story.
It's a story that you as a football fan are a part of, and that's what makes it so fascinating. The future of football is still being written, and it's up to all of us to shape it.
I think that's a great point to end on.
The Super League might have been a failed experiment, but it forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the sport we love.
And that in itself is a valuable lesson.
So there you have it. We've journeyed through the tumultuous history of the European Super League, explored its motivations, witnessed its dramatic rise and fall, and pondered its lasting impact on the beautiful game.
Quite a journey.
I hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this complex and controversial saga.
A lot to think about.
And perhaps it's even sparked some thoughts about what you want the future of football to look like, because at the end of the day, football belongs to all of us.
It does.
Keep those football brains buzzing, and we'll catch you in our next deep dive adventure.